This took a long time to set up, but what I have here is a franchise mode where every single team is 0, 0, and 16. There are 256 games in an NFL regular season. I played against myself using 2 controllers for every single one of those games using 1-minute quarters. In short, this took me about 50 hours to set up. Now obviously the big question here is, how does Madden decide who goes to the playoffs? Now every game was a 0-0 tie, which means that all of the playoff tiebreakers go straight out the window, because as you get further down the list, it breaks the tie based on things like net points and touchdowns, all of which are things none of these teams have. The final tiebreaker is a coin toss, so there's a chance that Madden just randomly picks the teams, but I also feel like there's a chance it would rather use its own data to break the ties and does it based on something like total yards, which all the teams have different numbers. Without further ado, let's take a look at this year's playoff teams when every team tied every game, never scoring a point. And I should say, I haven't looked at these things yet, so it's as big as a surprise to me as it is to you. Now the first thing you'll notice here is that there are no playoff designations. So what I'll do is after this as well, I'll jump into the playoffs and see what happens there, because obviously right now, nobody's been marked with anything because nobody's clinched anything. This may break the game when I advance, who knows? So this is interesting, and I don't know why it works like this. So the Ravens are number 1, Steelers 30, Bengals 31, Browns 32. So you can see the order there. AFC South is 26 to 29, AFC East is 22 to 25. So they're all in their own groups. They're all in their own numbered groups, except for again the Lions. So here we go, we're advancing to the next week. I assume this is when the game does its little tiebreaker coin toss to see who goes through. So the Bears did not make it in, and we didn't expect them to. So actually what it is, the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams for whatever reason were the Ravens and the Lions. And the 2 wildcard teams from each conference were both teams that were from the number 1 team's division. So did it base it off the fact that those were the best teams and these teams tied with them both times, and that's the tiebreaker? That would make sense. It is a head-to-head based, like through your division, through your conference, whatever thing. So because for whatever reason it was decided that the Ravens and the Lions were the best teams in the NFL, obviously the teams that play in their division played them more than anybody else and never lost to them, therefore are the best teams available, and that is why they get the wildcard spots. I believe that is why, but what we're going to do to really find this out is also take a look at the total yards of all these teams and see if that has any correlation. So we can see here the total yards, and it has absolutely 0 correlation with any of it. It doesn't even decide what the top teams were. I have no idea how the top teams were decided because I did this in alphabetical order. I always went through the teams. I start with the Bears at the top and I go down. I'll show you here exactly how that works. So I user control every single team here. All 32 teams I am user controlling, and I always start at the top with the Bears for every single week, and then I go down playing through all the games. That means that if it did it based on whichever team I used first, it would be the Bears that go through, not the Lions and Ravens. Lions and Ravens both in the middle, so it's also not the teams I used last. I have absolutely no idea why the Lions are the number 1 ranked team in the NFC, or why the Ravens are the number 1 ranked team in the AFC. It is not based on total yards. Maybe it's based on yards allowed. The only thing that the Lions lead in is the yards allowed, and that would be an odd thing to decide the best on. As you can see here now, as we're here anyway, the penalties. We picked up a lot of delay of game penalties. You can see it's all multiples of, well, I don't know why the 49ers have a random penalty there, but most of this is all delay of games because I didn't always pay 100% attention. Turnovers, we have some of those as well. And again, it's not the turnover differential. I thought maybe that. To answer the first question, how does Madden decide who goes into the playoffs? I have absolutely no idea. Well, I do. In terms of how it decides who the wildcard teams are, I think that's pretty obvious. It bases it off who the highest ranked teams are in the AFC and NFC. But outside of that, there is absolutely no logic behind how the other teams get ranked. But another thing I thought would be fun to look at is the awards, the end of season awards, because people have been gaining yards and things, and I wanted to look at who the best players in the NFL are based off the fact that nobody scored any points. So the MVP is David Johnson, and as we can see here, all the favorites for the MVPs are all running backs because, of course, the easiest way to run the clock out is to run the ball, so that's what I did. David Johnson is our league MVP. So David Johnson had 64 rushes for 297 yards, 4.6 yards per carry. 7 broken tackles. Now the one that's more interesting is Coach of the Year, because obviously I assume that's going to be John Harbaugh. It's not, it's Todd Bowles. That makes absolutely no sense. Everybody tied. The Jets weren't even the best in any of the yardage things, turnovers, but the number 1 ranked team and the number 2 ranked team John Harbaugh right at the bottom, it makes no sense. And here, in the news, John Harbaugh is announced as Coach of the Year, which I thought would make sense as his team was technically ranked first, but we saw in the awards it was Todd Bowles. So even the game gets confused about these things. So to sum up, the 2 conference champions are the North winners. So it's the AFC and NFC North. Now North is, as you can see, the team, well, it makes sense, it's North that Madden selects first when it comes to ordering them. So I don't think that's a random selection there, the fact that the Ravens and Lions of the NFC and AFC North were the champions of their conferences. However, why it was the Ravens and Lions, I'm not sure. There is no selection based on that. It may be random within those 2 divisions. And then based off that, just two other teams, again, no way it was necessarily picked again. The 2 random teams, Packers and Vikings, are the ones that go through. If we take a look at the standings, so it's not random. For whatever reason, they were selected to be 2nd and 3rd in the division, is why they were the wildcard teams. But to answer the question definitively, and this is the answer, what happens when every single team ties every single game in an NFL season on Madden, for the very least? If it happens in the NFL, it will just be decided by a coin toss. That is a simple fact. How many coin tosses? I don't know. But point is, on Madden, the winners of the conferences will be selected out of the AFC and NFC North, based of course on the standings. How the standings are decided, I don't know, but the playoff teams then are based on those standings for all of the divisions, and the wildcard teams are taken out of the conference champions divisions. So the Packers and Vikings out of that, the Steelers and Bengals out of the AFC North, because they played the best team in the NFL the most times and didn't lose to them. So I've got an idea for one final test. I thought obviously this order was random, but random doesn't quite sit well enough with me. I need a reason for why these teams end up being ordered this way. So what I went ahead and did is I started a new franchise mode, brand new one, just to see what order all the teams are in when nobody's done anything. For a second here, I thought we were onto something. I checked what the original order is when you start a new franchise mode up, and look at the order here. Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. However, then I looked at the other divisions, and the easiest one to remember, of course, is the AFC North, and that's Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Steelers. So, no, not the case whatsoever. It's actually, majoritively alphabetical order, except for whatever reason, the NFC North, again, now is in alphabetical order. So when you look at them here, that is the way it goes. When we start a new franchise, it's alphabetical order. I thought then that it would be based on alphabetical order. But again, we look, for whatever reason, it says it in that order there, Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. If I now start a new character, and it's the Ravens, let's see where they end up. Okay, so I didn't actually select the Ravens, I selected the Browns, so it didn't affect it, and there we are. Standings, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Browns. So, we do have an answer. I actually managed to find an answer. I thought I'd finished this video. That is not the case. I have the answer for why it's this order. It is the original order that for whatever reason it chooses this way. It's not the way it shows it in the rankings. That is based on alphabetical order through the divisions. However, the standings here, and this is what defines the order. Obviously, when you win games, it will go that way. Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, Browns. That's the exact same order as the division was when we went through the games and tied them all. So it is based off the original order that the teams are in. Absolutely nothing changes for them. It's not to do with yards, who you played with first, who you happen to control as the coach or whatever. Nothing to do with that. It just ends up being off the original order. So if you do any other season ever, that is everybody tied 6-0, the playoff teams will always be the playoff teams from this one. It would always be the Ravens and the Lions as the conference champions, and it will always be the Steelers and the Bengals and the Packers and the Vikings as the wildcard teams in the playoffs. That is that answered definitively, and also, quite sadly, actually just means I didn't have to play 256 games because the order is the same, but you don't know till you do it, and I have wasted 50 hours of my life. But I hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you enjoyed this video because it took me so long to make. I hope at least someone thought it was enlightening. Obviously, another thing we potentially could look at is things like the draft, how it orders those things. If you're interested in seeing those things, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching a video that took me over 50 hours to prepare. And let me know if you had any predictions that were either right or wrong for how this would happen.